first time I entered their house, the air felt still, like something unsaid had long been sitting between the walls. It was supposed to be my fresh start. At 17, I had floated through enough foster homes to know how to vanish into the background. Keep quiet, don't ask for too much. Smile enough to seem grateful, but not enough to invite questions. Asterisk, the woman who adopted me, Anita, was kind in the polite, measured way of someone who liked rescuing things. Her husband, Rafiq, barely spoke beyond "you hungry?" or "good grades?" And then there was their son. Asterisk Armand was 19. He moved like someone who knew people were watching him even when they weren't. Athletic. Tall, half-smile stitched permanently on his lips. He didn't look at me like a brother, but he didn't look at me like anything at all. Asterisk for the first few weeks, we barely shared a word. He left early for college, came home after dark, often trailed by friends or music spilling from his headphones. I told myself that was fine. I had my sketchbook, the quiet corner by the balcony, and a view of the trees outside. Asterisk still, I noticed things. How he never knocked. How he left his cologne open in the bathroom, like he wanted someone to breathe it in. How he moved around the house like it was too small for both of us. Like my being there made the air heavier. Asterisk one night, past midnight, I got up for water. The lights were off. The house quiet except for the hum of the fridge. I turned the corner, and there he was, sitting. On the kitchen counter, legs dangling, lit only by the moonlight. Asterisk he looked up. Said nothing. Passed me a glass without asking. Asterisk, I stood beside him, drinking slow. His arm brushed mine. Maybe accidental. Asterisk, I returned to bed that night with my heart hammering like I'd been caught doing something wrong. Oh, but nothing had happened. Nothing at all. Asterisk, weeks passed. The distance between us thinned, but never vanished. Started commenting on my art. Brief things. Nice colors. Or that looks real. One afternoon, he leaned over my shoulder while I sketched on the balcony. I felt his breath on my neck before I heard his voice. Asterisk, you're good, he said. Like actually good. Asterisk, I wanted to answer. I wanted to say something clever. Something that made him stay. But all I could manage was a nod. Asterisk later that week. His friend made a joke in front of me, something crude about my painting looking too soft, like a girl had drawn it. Armand's expression darkened. Shut up, he said, sharp. The room fell quiet. Asterisk after they left, I waited for him to say something. Didn't. Just gave me a glance, brief and unreadable. Before walking into his room, asterisk that night I dreamed of him standing beside my bed, not speaking, just watching. I woke up sweating, the sheets tangled around my legs like vines. Asterisk I tried to convince myself. It was just admiration, confusion. A boy trying to find his place in a house that was never his to begin with. But the more I watched him move, the way his fingers lingered on door frames, the way he stared out the window for too long, I felt something deeper brewing between us. Something too fragile to name. Asterisk I started waiting for him. Not obviously. I'd sit in the hallway pretending to read, or sketch in the living room past midnight. Sometimes he passed without looking at me. Other times, he paused. Once he ran a hand through my hair while I pretended to be asleep on the couch. Asterisk he didn't say a word. Just walked away like it never happened. Asterisk I told myself it was comfort, maybe affection, maybe something lost in translation. But it left behind a warmth that lingered too long, like the imprint of a hand on bare skin. Asterisk one evening, rain started early. Heavy. Loud against the windows. We were alone in the house. The power flickering like a warning was in his room. I stood outside his door, unsure why, unsure what I was waiting for. Asterisk, he opened it before I could knock. You scared? He asked, eyes half-shadowed. I shook my head, though I was lying. He stepped aside. Then come in. I did. The room smelled like soap, and something familiar I couldn't place. I sat on the edge of the bed. He lay back, one arm behind his head. The silence stretched. The storm raged on. Asterisk, I didn't know it then, but that was the night something in me began to unravel, not because of what he said, but because of what he didn't. Asterisk, because in that quiet, I realized DI wasn't looking for a brother, and he wasn't treating me like one. The storm outside clawed at the windows like a living thing. Thunder cracked overhead, shaking the glass in the panes. The lights had already gone out twice, plunging the house into brief, startling darkness each time. I sat, curled up on the couch, knees drawn to my chest, sketchbook forgotten beside me. Asterisk. Hated storms. It's a kind that sounded too much like yelling, too much like slamming doors. Memories I never spoke about came alive with every crash of the sky. Asterisk when the power failed again. It stayed gone longer than usual. The house fell into a deep, humming quiet. The only light came from a sliver of moon snaking in through the living room curtains. Asterisk, I didn't expect Armand to come downstairs. I hadn't heard his door open, hadn't sensed movement. But suddenly, he was there, standing in the hallway, like a shadow made real. Asterisk, lights out again, he asked, voice softer than usual. Asterisk, I nodded, not trusting my voice. He moved closer and dropped onto the couch beside me, close enough that our thighs nearly touched. He didn't ask why I hadn't gone to bed. He didn't offer explanations for why he'd left his room. We just sat, both of us staring at the blank television screen like it might save us from the weight of the silence. Asterisk, I don't like storms, I said eventually, voice barely a whisper. Asterisk, he didn't answer right away. Then, yeah, I figured.
Asterisk is.
Hand rested between us on the couch cushion, palm up, fingers loose. I could have touched him, could have reached over and wrapped my fingers around his. I didn't. Asterisk instead, I leaned back slowly, head pressing against the wall. My eyes fluttered shut and up from sleep, but from something else. A pull toward stillness. Toward pretending the moment was safer than it felt. Asterisk, he shifted beside me. The cushion sank slightly under his weight as he turned. I kept still. Asterisk then. His hand grazed my arm, barely, like a whisper over skin. I stayed quiet. Asterisk, his fingers brushed again, this time deliberate. They traveled down my forearm to my wrist, then paused there. I could feel the heat of his skin. My pulse jumped. Still, I did nothing. Asterisk, the storm covered the sound of our breathing, but not the awareness building between us. Asterisk, his hand didn't move away. Instead, his thumb made slow circles over my skin. Small rhythmic movements that sent a shiver down my spine. Asterisk. I told myself I was pretending to sleep, but I wasn't. I was choosing silence. Choosing not to speak, not to stop him, not to ask questions I didn't want answered. Asterisk. My heartbeat thudded in my ears, louder than the thunder now. Asterisk, he shifted again, leaning in. His breath touched the curve of my cheek. Warm, measured, too close. My skin buzzed, confused between fear and desire. Asterisk, when his fingers trailed over my hip, I flinched barely, but enough. He froze. Asterisk for a moment, neither of us moved. I held my breath. He waited. Then slowly he withdrew his hand, let it fall between us. He leaned back. The space grew again. Asterisk, he didn't apologize. He didn't speak. Just sat unmoving like nothing had happened. Asterisk, I opened my eyes, though I kept my face turned away. A part of me wanted to ask why. Why he touched me. Why he didn't stop sooner. Why he didn't speak, didn't offer anything but his silence and breath and skin. Asterisk, but I said nothing, because deep down I already knew, and I didn't want it confirmed. Asterisk, after a while, he stood. Quietly, no drama, no weight in his footsteps, just a shift. And then he was leaving only the warmth where his body had been. Asterisk, I stared at the empty space beside me, my hand still, tingling, unsure if I felt touched or hollowed out. Asterisk, upstairs. A door creaked open and closed. The rain kept falling, but the storm inside me had only just begun. Asterisk, that night I didn't sleep. Not because I was afraid, but because part of me still wanted to go after him, still wanted to be seen. Asterisk, I told myself nothing happened. But that was a lie dressed in silence. Asterisk and lies I was beginning to learn. have a way of growing louder the longer you pretend not to hear them. Asterisk. The days that followed blurred into something slow and watchful. Morning routines resumed like clockwork. Anita bustling in the kitchen, Rafik behind his newspaper, but I felt as though I had stepped sideways into another version of my life. One where nothing had changed on the outside, yet everything underneath had been cracked open. Asterisk. Armand didn't avoid me. He didn't act guilty. Didn't even seem different, which somehow made it worse. The morning after the storm, he greeted me with a casual nod over breakfast, eyes clear, voice steady, not a trace of the hand that had ghosted over my skin in the dark. Asterisk. I watched him closely, searching for signs that he remembered. A glance too long, a pause before speaking. But there was nothing, just the same half-smile, the same hoodie thrown over his shoulder as he left the house. Asterisk. I didn't know what I wanted from him. An apology? A conversation? A confession? Even I wasn't sure. But the silence between us now wasn't the same as before. It felt sharp, heavy with what hadn't been said. Asterisk. At night, I replayed everything in my mind. The way his fingers had trailed across my arm, the hesitation, the retreat. It didn't feel like an accident, but it also didn't feel finished. Like a chapter cut off mid-sentence. Asterisk. I started sleeping with my door locked. Not because I was afraid, but because I couldn't trust myself. I didn't know what I'd do if he entered again. If he sat beside me in the dark and didn't say a word. Asterisk. One evening, a week later, we were alone again. Anita and Rafik had gone to a wedding out of town, leaving us with a fridge full of leftovers and too much silence. Armand had been in his room most of the day. I stayed in mine, sketching half-heartedly, erasing more than I created. Asterisk. Just past midnight, I went to the kitchen for water. The lights were dim, the house quiet. I didn't hear him come up behind me, but I felt him. That same stillness he always carried, like the room changed the moment he entered it. Asterisk. You don't sleep much, he said softly. Asterisk. I turned slowly. He was leaning against the counter, arms crossed, watching me, but not smiling. Neither do you, I replied. A pause. Then, I've been thinking. Asterisk. My heart quickened. I set the glass down. About what? Asterisk. He looked down, then back. At me. His eyes, usually so calm, were unreadable now. Asterisk. That night, during the storm. His voice faltered. You weren't asleep, were you, Staska? I didn't answer. He already knew. Asterisk. I'm sorry, he said, and it landed between us like something too fragile to touch. I shouldn't have. Asterisk. I cut him off. Why did you? Asterisk. He didn't speak right away. Just stared at the floor like the answer lived. There. Because I was confused. Because I felt something. For a while. And I didn't know how to name it. Asterisk. I swallowed hard. My throat felt dry. So you tested it on me? Asterisk. No. It wasn't like that. He stepped closer. I didn't mean to hurt you. I didn't know if you felt it too. Asterisk. Felt what? I wanted to scream. The loneliness. The pull. The aching need to belong to someone, even if just for a moment. Asterisk. I don't know what I felt, I said honestly. It wasn't nothing, but it wasn't okay either. Asterisk. He nodded slowly. I know. Asterisk. We stood in silence. The fridge. Humming behind us, time ticking too loudly. Asterisk. I keep telling myself it was just the storm, I said. Just confusion, just loneliness. Asterisk. Maybe it was all of that, he replied, but maybe it was also real, even if it was wrong. Asterisk. I'd flinched. You think it was wrong? Asterisk. He looked at me. I soft, tired, don't you? Asterisk. I didn't answer, 'cause part of me did. And part of me didn't. Asterisk. He reached out. Slow this time, and rested a hand on my shoulder. Not possessive, not hungry, just there, present, warm. Asterisk. I don't want to lie to you, he said, but I don't know how to be honest either. Asterisk. Nodded, something brittle in my chest, cracking slightly. Then maybe it's better if we stop pretending altogether. Asterisk, he held my gaze. Can we, though? Pretend it never happened? Asterisk, I didn't know. But I knew pretending had already broken something in both of us. Asterisk. And whatever happened next would depend on whether we had the strength to stop chasing shadows in the dark. Asterisk. The silence between us lingered long after that night in the kitchen. It was a different kind of silence now, no longer built on avoidance but on awareness. Everything we did felt loaded with memory. The brush of a shoulder in the hallway, the quiet exchange of glances over breakfast. Words we didn't say echoed louder than the ones we did. Asterisk. I started walking in the evenings, trying to clear my head. The air helped. The open sky felt less heavy. But my thoughts stayed tethered to Armand. To his apology, to the way he'd said, he didn't know how to be honest. Like the truth itself frightened him. And maybe it frightened me too. Asterisk. A week passed, then another. Neither of us brought it up again. But nothing between us had returned to normal. There was no normal. Left, only the aftermath, and what we chose to do with it. Asterisk. One evening, I found him on the back steps, hunched over his knees, staring at the horizon. It was dusk, the sky bruised with fading light. Asterisk. He didn't turn when I stepped outside, just shifted slightly to make room for me. Asterisk. We sat in silence for a while. It's the only sound, the crickets and the soft creak of wood beneath us. Asterisk. I've been thinking about what you said, I offered. Asterisk. He glanced at me. Which part? Asterisk. That maybe it was real. Even if it was wrong. Asterisk. He didn't answer immediately. Yeah, he said after a pause. I keep thinking about that too. Asterisk. I pulled my knees to my chest, resting my chin on them. You were never just my brother, he turned, eyes narrowing slightly in confusion. I mean, you've always felt like more than a sibling. Not in the way that word means. Just, you were the first person who ever really saw me. Asterisk. He exhaled, almost a laugh, but it came out cracked. And maybe that's what messed it up. Asterisk. Maybe, I said. Did. But that night whatever happened, it didn't come from nothing. Asterisk. No. He agreed. It didn't. We sat like that, each of us staring into the middle distance of our own thoughts. I don't want to hate you, I said, and I don't want to hate myself either. Asterisk. He nodded slowly. I don't want you. 2. I don't want to keep carrying this like it's poison. Asterisk. I looked over at him. So then, what do we do with it? Asterisk. He rubbed the back of his neck like the question physically pained him. I think we acknowledge it, and then we let it go. Not pretend it didn't happen. But also not let it define what comes next. Asterisk. I wanted to believe that was possible, that we could stand at the edge of something dangerous, step back, and still move forward. But it was hard. I'm scared I'll always wonder, I admitted. What if I hadn't pretended to sleep? What if I'd turned around and looked you in the eyes? Asterisk. Would it have changed anything? Asterisk. I don't know. Asterisk. Armand sighed, his shoulders sagging. I keep asking myself that too. But maybe. The point isn't what could have happened. Maybe the point is that we didn't cross that line. Asterisk. I swallowed. But we came close. Asterisk. Yeah, he said, almost in a whisper. Too close. Asterisk. The honesty of it hurt, but it also healed. Like finally exhaling after holding your breath for too long. Asterisk. We sat on the steps until the stars appeared, till the shadows grew long and the air turned cold. Asterisk. When we finally stood, it wasn't with resolution, but it was with understanding. Asterisk. In the days that followed, things shifted gently, not erased, just changed. There were fewer lingering stares, fewer moments that felt like almosts. We became careful with each other, gentle, respectful. We laughed again, shared stories, made jokes. Slowly, the sharpness of that night dulled into memory, but we never spoke of it again. Some truths don't need repeating to stay real, and some wounds heal best when given space instead of pressure. Asterisk. Years later, When I think back to that storm, to the way Armand touched my arm in the dark, I no longer feel confusion or fear. I feel something more complicated. A kind of quiet sorrow mixed with a bittersweet tenderness. Asterisk, we never became what we might have, but we also didn't lose everything to the silence. Asterisk, and sometimes that's enough. Sometimes surviving the edge of something is a love story in itself. Asterisk.